Ethan Callahan stood on the porch, watching as Camila Reyes hurried down the stone steps of his modern Portland home. The autumn air was crisp, and the soft glow from the gate lights caught the waves in her dark hair, casting a gentle halo around her. "Camila, wait," his voice cut through the silence, calm but edged with suspicion. She turned, holding 2 heavy shopping bags. "Yes, Mr. Callahan? Did I forget something?" Ethan studied her, his gaze sharp, searching for something. Hesitation? Guilt? Anything. "Those bags. What's in them?" Her grip tightened slightly. "Just some groceries. I picked them up during lunch. Is there a problem?" He stepped closer, voice quieter now. "You've been leaving early a lot lately. You said it was family issues. Your mother's sick, right?" Camila nodded, a slight flush creeping across her cheeks. "I told you, she's undergoing treatment." "I heard you on the phone yesterday," Ethan said. "Spanish. I caught a few words. Send money, need more." She swallowed hard. "I don't understand what you're suggesting." "I'm not guessing, Camila. I feel it. Something's not adding up, and I need to understand why." Silence thickened between them. Camila straightened her back, eyes steady. "If you don't trust me, Mr. Callahan, maybe you should hire someone else to clean your house." She turned away, heels tapping briskly on the stone path, her figure disappearing into the night. Ethan didn't move. He stood there, jaw clenched, watching until she was gone. Back inside his sleek glass and steel fortress, designed to keep the world out. He poured himself a scotch and stared out at the glowing skyline. This house had once been a statement of pride. Now it felt like a cage, elegant, secure, and utterly empty. He picked up his phone and called Liam Park, his assistant and closest confidant. "Did you find anything in Camila's background?" "Clean as a whistle," Liam replied. "But Ethan, you're spiraling again. She's been with you for 8 months without a single issue." Ethan scoffed. "So did Jennifer, until she walked out with my grandmother's necklace. I'm not making the same mistake twice." He ended the call and moved to his office. Security monitors blinked. Empty rooms, polished surfaces, not a speck out of place. Everything under control. Everything except people. He opened Camila's employee file. 29 valid documents, verified references. But there were gaps. Evenings unaccounted for. Conversations in rapid Spanish, a money transfer receipt for $500, 0 cents to Honduras, tucked in the pocket of her coat. The one he'd offered to hang for her. Need more money. The words echoed again in his mind. Camila. The quiet girl with kind eyes. Or had he let the shadows of his past blind him again? Or, just maybe, was he the one too blind to see the truth? Ethan Callahan was born into a world where trust was a luxury few could afford. His father was the most powerful construction mogul in Oregon, tough, calculating, and never one to offer second chances. His mother had passed away early, leaving behind a silence no achievement could ever fill. When a car accident took both parents when Ethan was just 23, he inherited the empire, pivoted into architecture, and quickly rose to fame, not just for his talent, but for his precision, his detachment, his obsessive control. His house, a sleek glass and steel structure overlooking the Willamette River, wasn't just a home. It was a barrier, a shield, a fortress. No one got in. Unless Ethan allowed it. The kitchen sparkled under recessed lights. The fridge was stocked with food he never touched. The sofas bore no imprint of use. The fireplace remained cold. The air purifier hummed constantly. Every element designed for order, not comfort. No one lived here. Not really. Except Ethan. Years of betrayal by assistants, girlfriends, even distant cousins had taught him to believe in one thing only: surveillance. His security system ran 24/7. Motion sensors in every room. A triple encrypted private server held months of footage. Ethan never asked. He verified. He investigated. He eliminated threats before they had time to grow. And Camila, somewhere in his mind, she had become a threat. She was quiet, educated, meticulous in her work, but that perfection unnerved him. The most dangerous betrayals always came wrapped in calm and competence. He sat in his office, staring at the monitor. Camila was gone. The house had returned to its usual silence. He picked up his glass and took a sip of scotch, but it tasted more bitter than usual. Was he being paranoid again? Or was his intuition trying to protect him from another heartbreak? He swiveled his chair toward the massive window. The city was beginning to glow. Small apartment windows lighting up across the river. Faint laughter drifting from somewhere far below. And his house, his perfect, curated, spotless house, remained quiet. Utterly, painfully quiet. The next evening, Ethan received a text from Camila at exactly 6:00 p.m. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. See. Working where? He hadn't assigned anything that evening. No cleaning, no special projects, nothing. He set down his glass and walked straight to the garage. The black Range Rover slid out onto the road, blending into the late rush hour traffic in Portland. Ethan had followed Camila once before to make sure she got home safely. But this wasn't the same. This time, it wasn't protection. It was something else. Uncertainty, tension, maybe even something personal. He parked 3 blocks from her usual bus stop. Camila always took the 75 at 6:45 p.m. Right on time, same route, same rhythm. 6:44 p.m. There she was, hair tied back, wearing a worn but warm coat, the same 2 heavy bags in her hands. She boarded the bus without noticing the vehicle, watching from afar. Ethan followed, staying 3 cars behind. His heart thumped, fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter with every passing light. Each red light stretched on forever. The bus turned off into a quieter, older part of East Portland. Camila stepped off, still carrying her bags. Ethan pulled over across the street, watching from the shadows. She walked into a weathered building with faded lettering in Spanish. Centro Nuevos Horizontes. New Horizons Center. His suspicions spiked again. What was this place? Some shady operation? A front for something illegal? He crossed the street cautiously, staying in the dark. Through dusty glass windows, he saw Camila embrace an elderly woman, then move to the front of a modest room. About 20 elderly adults sat in folding chairs, notebooks and pencils in hand. Camila smiled brightly. Buenas noches, todos. Today, we're practicing how to order food at restaurants. Ethan froze. For the next hour, he stood there, still, watching. Camila was radiant as she taught, patient and warm. When an older man stumbled over a phrase, she knelt beside him, repeating the words gently. When a woman looked overwhelmed, Camila offered a hand on her shoulder, whispered something in Spanish that made the woman laugh softly. During the break, Camila opened her bags and unpacked sandwiches, apples, crackers. She plated everything carefully and served it to her students. She laughed, she asked about their grandchildren, she helped one man button his coat. Ethan stepped back instinctively. This wasn't a con. This wasn't a scheme. This was giving. Giving time, giving effort, giving what little she had to help others live with dignity. When he returned home, he sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and typed in Centro Nuevos Horizontes. A simple website appeared. A nonprofit organization supporting immigrants, English classes, legal aid, job training, child support. Camila was in nearly every photo, teaching, handing out food, reading books to children. In each picture, her smile was wide, full of life, nothing like the quiet reserve she carried in his home. He found the financials. The center was barely hanging on, month-to-month operations, limited resources. They were on the verge of shutting down. And for the first time in years, something deep inside Ethan stirred. He leaned back in his chair, eyes lingering on a photo of Camila handing a workbook to an elderly man. He'd been wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Ethan sat alone in his office, the dim light of the monitor reflecting off his tired face. It was nearly 2 a.m., but he couldn't pull himself away from the screen. The website for Centro Nuevos Horizontes was open. Simple, unpolished but honest. One sentence stood out: helping immigrants feel welcome, supported, and heard. Such a plain mission, and yet Ethan found himself reading it again and again. He clicked into the current program section. Camila appeared everywhere. In one photo, she was sitting beside an elderly woman from El Salvador, gently guiding her hand as she spelled the word hospital. In another, she was standing next to a truck filled with produce and rice, handing out supplies to families with no income. And in a third, Ethan's favorite, Camila was reading a children's book to a group of kids. He could almost hear her voice through the still image. He zoomed in on the last picture, Camila smiling, not the polite, composed smile she wore at his house, but something more. Joyful, radiant, alive. She didn't belong to his world. The glass walls, untouched couches, empty meetings. She belonged here, where people hugged when they greeted, called each other by name, and shared whatever little they had like it was a feast. The next morning, Ethan said nothing as Camila arrived. She was the same, polite, quiet, efficient, but he watched more closely. When she wiped down the kitchen counter, her hands trembled slightly. When she arranged flowers in the dining room, her eyes looked tired, reddened from what was likely a late night at the center. Still, in those tired eyes, something glowed. He picked up his phone and dialed Liam. "What are you thinking?" Liam asked after the second ring. "I don't think she's hiding anything," Ethan said quietly. "I think I completely misjudged her." Silence on the line. "She's a good person, Liam," Ethan continued. "Really good. She doesn't just tidy and vacuum, she uses every spare moment to serve others. And she doesn't want anything from me. That's the part that makes me feel the smallest." Liam exhaled. "When's the last time you met someone like that?" Ethan paused for a long time. Maybe. Never. That afternoon, Ethan logged into one of his anonymous charitable shell accounts. He didn't hesitate. The number on the screen? $50,000, 0 cents. He typed in the recipient, Centro Nuevos Horizontes. Clicked Submit. No name, no note. Just a cold transfer from a man learning how to care again. An hour later, his phone lit up with a message from Camila. "The center just received a $50, 0 cents K donation. Can you believe it? We're not shutting down. I want to cry. Someone out there is amazing." Ethan stared at the screen. He wanted to say, "It was me," but instead he typed, "That's incredible. I'm happy for you." Camila replied with a heart emoji. Ethan set the phone down, the photo of her still on his monitor, teaching in that old coat, her smile lighting up the room. For the first time in years, a dollar he spent didn't buy silence, obedience, or control. It helped protect something good in the world. In the days that followed, Ethan began to change. Not through grand gestures, but through quiet shifts. He started appearing in places where Camila happened to be working, always under the pretense of something casual, a coffee that needed refilling just as she wiped the counter, a folder forgotten on the living room table where she was vacuuming, clumsy questions like, "How's the center today?" or "Did teacher Camila get new students?" Camila noticed, but said nothing. She simply smiled. Their once awkward conversations slowly grew. Beneath each casual question was genuine interest, and between each quiet exchange emerged something warm and unspoken. One late afternoon, golden sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Ethan sat at the table, slowly swirling a glass of iced tea. Camila was organizing the bookshelf, her hair tied up in a loose bun, wisps of it brushing her cheek. "What are you studying?" Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper. Camila paused for a moment, then turned. "Social work. I'm finishing my master's." He nodded. "What's your thesis about?" She pulled a thick folder from her bag and handed it to him. "Barriers to Social Mobility in Immigrant Communities." He read the title, then looked up. "How long have you been working on this?" "Almost 2 years," she said, sitting across from him. "I've interviewed over 50 immigrants. El Salvador, Guatemala, Vietnam, Ethiopia. Many were engineers, teachers, accountants, but here They clean houses, wash dishes, or can't get work at all. Their degrees mean nothing here. Ethan stayed silent, listening as she continued, her voice calm but laced with quiet fire. This system creates inequality no one talks about. A woman who taught university in Caracas now washes plates 10 hours a day. A 70-year-old grandmother refuses to see a doctor because she can't speak English and is afraid of being misunderstood. I see it every day. Ethan leaned in, eyes fixed on her. You don't just see it, you feel it. She smiled faintly. Maybe because I'm part of it. My mom was a nurse in Honduras. When we came here, she cleaned hospital floors. I grew up watching people call her a janitor, not a nurse who saved lives. That sentence hit Ethan like a stone to the chest. He thought of how he'd once seen Camila. Just another housekeeper. Another name in a security log. A replaceable service. And now, he felt ashamed. So you're writing this to change that? He asked. I'm writing to make noise. I want institutions to understand that immigrants don't lack skills, they lack access. If they get language support, career guidance, and legal protection, they don't have to stay trapped at the bottom. Ethan exhaled slowly. You remind me of an architect I once admired, he said. Every urban problem could be solved if we understood the people before we built the city. Camila looked up, eyes bright. And I think every social issue begins with listening to stories no one else is telling. Silence stretched between them, not out of discomfort, but because something meaningful had passed between them. Ethan looked at the woman before him, not just a housekeeper, but a scholar, a quiet warrior for justice, someone who lived with purpose, powered by intellect, compassion, and resilience no one saw. Camila, he said finally, you make me want to be better. She chuckled softly. You already are. Maybe you just haven't felt it yet. He said nothing more, just looked at her, long and steady, and realized that in a world full of walls and doubt, some people still had the courage to build bridges. Camila entered the house just like every other morning, bag over her shoulder, hair in a neat bun, her worn coat slightly creased at the sleeves. But Ethan was different. He had been waiting since 8 a.m., coffee brewed, shirt tucked in, as if preparing for an important meeting. Good morning, Mr. Callahan, Camila said, as usual. Camila, he looked up and smiled gently. Do you have a few minutes? She looked surprised. Of course. They sat in the study, a room Camila rarely entered. On the desk was a leather-bound folder and a neatly clipped contract. Ethan took a deep breath. I'd like to offer you a new position. Camila frowned slightly. You mean? I want you to become the household manager. Not just cleaning, but overseeing other staff, managing schedules, handling logistics, and if you'd like, having the flexibility to continue school. She opened the folder. The salary was nearly triple her current pay. Health insurance, paid vacation, a yearly education stipend. Camila looked up. Why do you trust me now? You didn't before. Ethan met her eyes. Because now I know who you are. You're smart, responsible, and you care deeply. I don't just trust you, I admire you. She said nothing for a moment, then nodded. I'll need to think about it. Of course, Ethan replied. Take all the time you need. A week passed. That morning, Camila knocked softly on the study door. Ethan was working but immediately paused. I've thought about your offer, she said, calm and clear, and I'm grateful, truly, but I can't accept. Ethan sat up, his chest tightening. Why not? Camila looked at him, eyes honest. Because if I take this job, I'll be living someone else's dream, not mine. She hesitated. I love what I do, the community center, my thesis, my students. I want to be a social worker, not a house manager, even if the offer is generous. Ethan nodded, his voice low. I understand. She smiled softly. There's another reason. He looked up. I fell in love with someone I thought would never love me back, someone who seemed from another world, wealthy, distant, untouchable. Ethan froze. Camila looked at him for a long moment. Then she placed the folder gently on the table. If I took this job, it would feel like selling something sacred. I can't reduce what I feel to paperwork and payroll. Silence. Ethan couldn't speak, and Camila said gently, I'm sorry, but I have to live my truth. A week after that conversation, Camila entered the office with a quietness that felt heavier than usual. In her hands was an envelope and the small notebook she had used for house management tasks. Ethan looked up, and one glance at her eyes told him everything. Mr. Callahan, Camila said softly, I'd like to formally give my notice. His heart sank. He nodded slowly. When will your last day be? In 2 weeks, she replied. I'm sorry it's short, but I just got invited for a second interview with the City Community Services Department. I want to fully prepare. Congratulations, Ethan said, steadying his voice. That's the job you always dreamed of. Camila smiled, though her eyes carried a quiet sadness. Yes. It's what I've been working toward since the beginning, and now it's almost within reach. Would you like me to write a reference? He asked, voice quieter now. She nodded. If you're willing, I think a letter from you would carry weight. I'll do it, Ethan said, and I'll mean every word. I'll write it like I'm recommending someone I truly admire. Camila smiled again, the first real smile he had seen since she turned down his offer. The next 2 weeks passed like a slow, bittersweet melody. Each morning, Ethan rose earlier just to catch one last glimpse of her folding towels, watering plants, or lining up the books. Every afternoon, he found excuses to speak with her, even if only for a few moments. Camila worked more meticulously than ever, as if leaving wasn't enough. She wanted to leave everything flawless. She trained the new housekeeper with care, wrote down routines, and cleaned corners no one would ever check. Friday afternoon, her final day, Camila stepped into his office to return the house key. Ethan handed her a large envelope, final paycheck, and a little graduation gift. Camila opened it, her eyes widened at the amount, enough to cover her mother's medical costs for a full year. Ethan, this is too much. Not compared to what you've brought into this house, he said. Call it a thank you. She was quiet for a long moment, then stepped forward and hugged him. Thank you, not just for your generosity, but for seeing me. Ethan held her gently, not trusting himself to speak, because if he said a word, he might not be able to let go. 2 months after Camila left Ethan's house, a formal invitation from Centro Nuevos Horizontes arrived at his door. You are cordially invited to the annual community gala, honoring those who have served Portland's immigrant families. Below the gold lettering was the name of one of the honorees, Camila Reyes, Volunteer of the Year. Ethan held the invitation for a long time. He had tried to step back, to let her live her dream without him in the picture. But he had still followed from a distance, seen her land a job at the Community Services Department, read about new classes she launched, seen her smile on the center's homepage. He had promised not to interfere, but this invitation, it felt like a door quietly left ajar. The gala was held inside the modest hall of the very same center where it all began. As Ethan entered, his navy suit made him look slightly out of place among folding chairs, soft yellow lights, and the warm laughter of immigrant families of all ages. Camila stood on the far side of the room, talking with a group of elderly students. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pinned up, her smile lighting up the entire space. Their eyes met. She froze for a moment, surprised, then puzzled, and finally, warm. Ethan nodded from afar. He didn't move closer. He stayed still, an outsider watching someone he loved shine. Soon, the event began. The host called Camila to the stage to receive her award. The room erupted in applause as she walked up. She stood at the microphone, slightly nervous, but her eyes filled with conviction. This center changed my life, she began. When I first came to this country, I felt invisible, but here I learned that everyone deserves a chance to learn, to be heard, and to contribute. Her voice caught for a second. And someone helped us survive our most difficult moment. An anonymous donor, I don't know who they are, but they believed in us, even when we were still learning to believe in ourselves." Ethan looked down, his hands clenched in his lap. After the ceremony, Camila was surrounded. People congratulated her, embraced her, but her eyes kept drifting toward the refreshment table, toward him. Near the end of the evening, as the room began to empty, Camila made her way to him. "You really came?" she said, voice soft as a breeze. Ethan nodded. "I couldn't not. You deserve to be seen tonight." "Thank you," she said, "for coming, and for everything, even the parts I don't fully understand." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then finally, he said the words, "Camila, the donation, the money for your mother, it was me." She froze, eyes wide. "It was you?" "I followed you that night. I thought you were lying, but then I saw you teaching that class, and I realized I'd been wrong about everything." Camila said nothing, just stared at him for a long, long time. Finally, her voice was quiet. "You didn't have to do that. I didn't need to be rescued." "I know," Ethan replied. "It wasn't because you needed saving. It was because I needed to do something good." Camila didn't look away from Ethan. The room had mostly emptied now, the soft chatter fading like a distant melody. She spoke, her voice low and hoarse. "You followed me and quietly helped without ever saying anything?" Ethan nodded. "At first I was ashamed for having doubted you. Then I was afraid that if you knew, you wouldn't accept it." "I wouldn't have," Camila replied, eyes never leaving his. "It took me a long time to earn my own dignity." "I know," Ethan said honestly, "but it wasn't pity. You weren't a project. You were light. You reminded me that the world isn't just control and loss." Camila stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled softly, like something inside her had finally untangled. "Who did you think I was in love with?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" "Remember when I said I loved someone I could never have? I was talking about you." Ethan felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. "But you left. You turned down the job. You said we were from different worlds." "I thought you couldn't possibly understand my world," Camila said. "But now I'm not so sure. A man who didn't care wouldn't be standing here. He wouldn't have helped a whole community in secret. He wouldn't look at me like you're looking at me now." Ethan swallowed hard. "Camila, I don't just admire you, I love you." Camila was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped closer and gently placed her hand on his cheek. "And I love you," she whispered. "Not because of what you did, but because you learned how to see me." They stood in silence, surrounded by the dimmed lights of the room where everything began. Love didn't need grand declarations. Sometimes it was just two people left standing in a quiet room, looking at each other, and knowing they'd found something rare. Not trust in others, but faith in themselves. 3 months after the gala, Centro Nuevos Horizon officially opened its new learning wing, a bright space filled with computers, smartboards, a small library, and private counseling rooms for immigrant families. On the bronze plaque outside, the engraved name read, "The Camila Reyes Learning Center, where every dream is heard." Camila beamed as she unveiled the sign. She didn't know Ethan had quietly funded the entire project, still under his old anonymous alias. After the ceremony, she stepped outside, where Ethan waited with 2 cups of coffee. "They should have added a line, designed by a man who didn't know how to trust," he joked. Camila laughed. "And now I've learned that trust isn't weakness," Ethan said. "It's the beginning of everything good." They didn't move in together right away. They took time to truly get to know each other, not as boss and employee, but as 2 people learning to build a life together. Ethan began volunteering weekly at the center, teaching financial literacy to immigrant families. He sat beside Carlos, the man who once couldn't read a lease, and helped him write his first household budget. Camila continued her social work, but now she wasn't carrying it all alone. She had a partner. Not a savior, not a shadow, but someone who trusted her and stood beside her. One afternoon, while they were shelving books in the new library, Camila asked, "Did you ever think this would happen?" Ethan shook his head. "I used to believe I could only trust numbers and control, but you made me believe in people." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then let's keep believin'," she whispered. Outside the window, Portland basked in soft golden light. Children played in the courtyard. Laughter floated on the wind. A new beginning didn't have to be perfect. It only needed two people walking forward together, rooted in understanding, trust, and a love built on deep mutual respect.